Beautiful. The Visiting Artist Program, funded by PAFA's graduate program, brings an outstanding roster of local, national, and international artists to PAFA each semester for lectures, critiques, and workshops. The program exposes students and the public to a range of artistic approaches and fosters discussions about contemporary art and ideas. This afternoon, we are pleased to have Lavaughan Jenkins joining us. Lavaughan Jenkins is a painter, printmaker, and sculptor. He was raised in Pensacola, Florida, and currently creates his work in Boston, Massachusetts. He received a BFA from the Massachusetts College of Art and Design in 2005. Since that time, Jenkins has become a recipient of the 2019 James and Audrey Foster Prize awarded annually by the Institute of Contemporary Art in Boston. In 2016, he was named Emerging Artist of the Year at Kingston Gallery in Boston, Massachusetts. Jenkins is a recipient of the 2015 Blanche E. Colman Award and in 2002 received a Rob Moore Grant in painting. He has exhibited his work most recently at venues such as Abigail Ogilvy Gallery in Boston, the Painting Center in New York, Suffolk University Gallery in Boston, and Oasis Gallery in Beijing, China. Jenkins donates annually to the Massachusetts College of Art and Design auction, which supports student scholarships. So without further ado, please help me in giving a warm welcome to Lavaughan. You may now begin sharing your screen.
It's so cool to finally get to hang out with you guys. That was a great rundown, so I don't really have much more to add to that. In terms of shows and things, I'll just say this, that I don't turn down shows. So there's a lot lately, the last like maybe 3 or 4 years, it's probably been like 4 or 5 shows a year. And that's me creating new work for each show, which is a little crazy, but it's like you do so many shows and you don't want people to come out and see the same thing. So I try to make as much work as possible. Also, it's what I do for a living. So I'm literally in my studio 24 hours a day. So I'm able to produce a lot of work. But so that's 2020 was pretty ridiculous because that meant I got no shows. It's like I did 2 shows before the pandemic and then everything kind of shut down. So getting over the emotional side of things, I've finally gotten back in the studio and now I'm like really, really cooking. So I'm working on like 90 new pieces like at the same time. So things are a little wild, you know, you guys get to see some of that stuff later. But I'll give you a little, before I jump into slides and things like that, I'll kind of give you a rundown of how I got here. We can start at the James and Audrey Foster Prize. That was 2019, which seems like 50 years ago because of last year. That was really awesome. Amazing opportunity and opened a lot of doors for myself. And now it's like I always want to I want everyone to see the impact that the show had and where it kind of altered or gave me the opportunity to do really what I wanted to do, which is like go big, like make new work better than last and keep growing and make all these insane pieces and share that immediate progression, because that show, that opportunity, I don't want to say it lit a fire underneath me because I kind of already had a fire, but it definitely added a bit of gasoline to that fire, you know. And so now this is everything that I'm going to show you guys is pretty much what happened since that show and where things are headed, which is, I'm really excited about that work. Um, I was traditionally a two-dimensional painter, I guess. I don't think I was really traditional in painting, but my thought process was that of tradition and art history and things like that. And as I got into more painting and trying to figure out what I wanted to do, it was a bit chaotic and dramatic. So I kind of had a little bit of a breakdown and took a long break, about 6 years. And it wasn't until 2014, I think in Boston, there was a Goya show at the MFA here. And that show, Goya is like my guy, my BFF. Why I decided that I wanted to really be a painter when I saw his work. And in that show, he kind of told me to start painting again. And that's the day I started back painting. And I did kind of a tribute thing to him where I copied like 50 of his pieces. And I made my version of his paintings and prints and all that good stuff. And that kind of took off. And then what I'll bring up before I start jumping into the images is that started me wanting to do more. And one day I had a dream with Philip Gustin. And in that dream, he came to my studio and gave me a crate. And he is the reason why I do 3D work. In that dream, he told me my two-dimensional work was okay. It was good paintings, not great paintings, but they were good. And that's his words. And he said, but if you really want to do something, you need to figure out how to make your work three-dimensional. Because there was this stoppage in my 2D work. And as a painter, you want to never stop painting, right? So you want to paint forever. So why wouldn't your paintings go on forever? And I thought, well, what if I can put that into one piece, and as you rotate it, it would continuously go on forever. Each time you turn it, there's a different angle, there's a new painting, new things that you get to find and things like that. So that being said, before I keep on rambling, I'm gonna jump into the images and I'll show you guys what I've been talking about. So, Goya. And I'll show you guys so a few images of his work. Nothing, no big talk about Goya and the artists that inspire me and things like that, but I'll run through some images so we can get to my work. Now, what I will say is these paintings, I love this one as well. I know I promised to do this. These paintings were the ones that kind of started me on doing my women paintings. I appreciated all the love that Goya showed to women, and the Duchess of Alba was the muse. And I took that idea and kind of made the Duchess of Alba painting my muse for my paintings, and took the women that played a role in my life and kind of positioned them in this state that Goya put her. And then we get to Philip Gustin. I never really looked at Philip Gustin's work until the dream, really. I knew a little bit about him. And also in that dream, he told me that I should check his work out because a lot of ways we were similar. So I did a little bit of exploration. I've never looked at titles and things, so I didn't know if the titles I was finding were actually the titles of his work. And you guys out there, if you know Philip Gustin, you'll be able to tell me if they were legit titles or someone just made some stuff up and then I just typed it into the work. And I think you guys have all the images. So if I am moving fast, you guys have them on file and you'll be able to go back. I have a lot of images and it was really hard to edit them down. And I think I probably started off with like 100 or so. And I was like, that's gonna take like 50 hours. So I should cut that down. And so I think I got it down to like 40, but we won't stick on them a lot. Starting here, this was some of the pieces that I did for my ICA show. And this is my Duchess series based off the Duchess of Alba and their oil and panel. So they're three-dimensional and they stick off about 8 or so inches off the wall. And I'm gonna fly through this because I want to get to all the work that I made in 2020 during the pandemic. But I just want to give you guys a good idea where I started. And they're not very big. They're mostly 12, 13 inches tall. And they're oil paint over foam, plaster, wire, pretty much everything that I can get my hands on to make a structure and then cover them with tons of oil paint. The idea behind the paintings is that they are just that, paintings. I wanted to take what I was doing two-dimensionally and rip it off the canvas, rip it off the wall, and make them 3D. What I will start to talk about once we get to 2020 will be the ideas behind the paintings. So these are just my little moments to share with you guys before I guess we get serious. And I'll say this show was 45 pieces that I made for that show. And I think I started with over 100. And then we edited it down to 45, which was still a lot for a show. So if you can imagine, I wish I had shots of the show, like wall to wall, there was nothing uncovered with my artwork. And I figured if I could overwhelm everyone with the amount of work, you can kind of get a sense of how I feel when I'm thinking about painting or trying to function in the art world. Most of my work is untitled. And this was the first piece that I titled pretty much since I can remember, since 2005, 2006. I haven't titled anything until 2020. And this was the first piece that I finished in January of 2020. And it's titled Not for Resale. And what you guys can see, those are Jordans, and I bought them, and they were the not for resale Jordans to kind of poke fun at the idea of the resale market of sneakers. And I thought that was funny, so that's why I bought them. And because I don't really collect sneakers, I wear them, and I wear them till they fall apart. And I've beaten those Jordans up pretty good. And I thought, well, that should be the title and speak about the idea of people reselling your artwork and making a profit, and then you don't see any of that I think if the artist makes it and people resell their work, they should probably get a percentage of that. I think that's just fair. So I thought that was a way to pull those two worlds together, which kind of make me. So 2020. This is a few of the pieces that I did in the last show I did in 2020, and that was to vote to art fair. And I jumped back on paper. And these are 22 by 30 oil and paper. And the paper is Arches oil paper, which is great because you can just start throwing your oil paint right on top of it without having to wet it and prime it and things like that. So it's ready to go and it doesn't really warp or anything. So it's really awesome. And I'll get through these a little quick as well. One thing that was happening that I got to take from the ICA show is one that I can afford to go bigger with work. That was probably a highlight. One of the highlights of the show is that the show almost sold out, and that meant financially I could afford to go big. And these are maybe 40 inches, almost 40 inches tall. And that's, again, it's all paint over wire, steel, because they're a little heavier, and foam and modeling paste, and then a ton of oil paint. And I made a ton of them. And this is a display from that show, which was amazing. And the physical space that these figures started to come in, started getting into what I wanted to talk about for the pandemic and social injustice. And I'll stop here for a second because at this point I wasn't painting. March, I think the second or third week in March is when I stopped painting. And I shut down, and it wasn't until the murder of George Floyd is when I picked up a paintbrush again. I thought the pandemic would be awesome because it would isolate me, and I would just focus on painting, and it would be this magical time for me to create so much work. And that lasted for like a week. And then the idea that I can't go outside kind of hit me, as much as I'm assuming it hit everyone. And things shut down, I shut down, and I didn't want to paint. And typically when I'm overly emotional, I don't paint at that time as well. I have to be in a really good mood and have really great energy to create. So, and so when the murder of George Floyd happened, I thought that I would not be able to function, and it was the opposite. All this work started pouring out of me, and titles started coming, which I never title work. But having conversations with my mom and my grandmother over this break, this 2020 thing, we kind of got a better connection between the three of us. And we talked a lot, and we listened to music a lot and talked about music. And as I'm listening to these songs, I thought how much they related to what I was feeling and what I was trying to say, with reposting images, donating to causes and things like that. I just didn't feel like that was enough. And I thought that my energy and drive for creating this new work, that this was my point to wake up and say the things that are on my mind and fight the way that I can, and that's through creating art, not just donating money or liking pictures and things on Instagram. I need to do more. And I thought my platform, the way that I create work, would be the perfect way to do that. So I started titling works after songs, and in conversations that I have with my family to kind of speak on where I am, where I'm from, and the pain that I've experienced over my years on this earth, and the experiences that I've gone through. So these figures hold all those emotions and all those memories, and it's spilled out into what you see right now. Colors got bigger, bolder, paint got heavier. Well, before they stayed pretty much on the base that they stood on. Well, now that they spill over the sides, and what I have as a base can't contain the figure, and that's kind of how I'm thinking about 2020 and all the insane things that continue to happen in this country and in this world. So it started spilling out into my paint. And then I got obsessed with it. And so I had so much to say, and every day something new was happening. So every day I was creating new work. And the more things happened, the more work came. And as I said earlier, since the murder of George Floyd, I've started 89 paintings. And then some are small and things like that. And so I can make a lot of work because I have enough room, because they're not huge. So I can do whatever. And in that series I just showed you guys, I probably had 30 of those, I think. And then I jumped into this newer idea. I didn't think I was saying enough still, and I need to be more blunt and more literal with my emotions. So I came up with this series of figures that that I wanted to pay a little bit of honor and respect to all the women that have gone unheard and unseen. As typically it's just the males that kind of get the media attention. Because for me personally, women, I wouldn't be here without all the women that have been able to deal with my my silliness in life. But from my mom to girlfriends to friends to the galleries that I've shown with, most of them have been women, and I think I love that. But there's just not enough appreciation and thanks for women in general that are clearly the backbone of my culture, but I think this country. So I thought, what better way than start to make a body of work that was just for the women. And they start here. And this started from a conversation that I had with my grandmother. I grew up pretty religious, and we went to church every Sunday. And one thing my grandmother would always say whenever anything was on my mind or on her mind, on how we were feeling about things, she would always just say, pray about it. And so these figures are saying a little prayer to every woman out there. And I thought, what an awesome tribute to them, and taking that say your name idea and go with it my way. And so thank you. And right now I have maybe 15 of these. Go back. It's okay. This thing is a little complicated for me. I'm a little little non-technical, technological, is that it? But in those pieces that I just showed you, I'm not selling them, but I'm kind of giving them out to certain women that I have connections to as a thank you. Originally I was going to sell them, but I just didn't think that was right. So I thought that it would just be really awesome to give them to women that I think just mean a lot to me, and I appreciate them. So for you out there that have received it, I don't even think I said that to you, but if you guys are tuned in and you got one of those figures, now you know that you really mean a lot. So thanks for that. And so now we get to the second part of 2020 to beginning of 2021. And I'm back on paper, and I'm way, way deep on paper. and I think I started with the idea that I was going to make 10 or 15 of these, and it turned into 45 pieces on paper, which is crazy. But I wanted to really sum up everything from 2020, and that's Black people in America, for all the social injustice and just everything about 2020, from the politics to pandemic, how I feel about being here in this country, how I feel for, I think was it yesterday or 2 days ago, all the senseless attacks on Asian Americans and the transgender community. It's so much, and I didn't know how I'll be able to make a body of work that would sum that up. So I thought I would make this body of work that would celebrate all of us and everyone that's here and making it through, but also remember everyone that's no longer here. So I have, I'm taking ideas from fashion and kind of putting my characters in their like Sunday best, and kind of showing appreciation for them. In these paintings, you'll see like they're surrounded by these figures, and there's another figure in the center that's praying or honoring and thanking them. And they're the women in the center, or some are male figures. I don't know if I have any of these in the slides, but they're telling that story. And the titles carry a lot of weight for these. They're not just titles; these are actually songs. And if you guys go back through the images and find those songs, they'll really tell you more about my work than I have time to tell you about today. But Woman of the Ghetto is probably one of my favorites. And you can kind of check that song out and you pretty much know how I grew up and my surroundings and all that stuff, but not just me. I think most of this country that grew up in the ghetto, that song would resonate and make perfect sense to them. So I think you guys really enjoy that song if you check it out later. Baltimore, I'm sure most of you guys know who Nina Simone is, and that's another one of those powerful songs. What you see here is to talk about those three-dimensional paintings from the beginning, trying to make this thing go full circle, is that every angle, there's a new painting. So this is just 4 sides, obviously, but you can kind of get the idea that every time you turn it, there's something. And that's one of those paintings that never stop. You know, they just keep going on. The Other Side of Town is another amazing song. Curtis Mayfield, probably one of my favorite singers. You can pretty much pick any one of his songs and it can be about today. And that's another one of those things where I picked that title because I felt it really showed how this country is divided. And I wanted to give you my perspective on where I'm from and share that story. So when future me's, little me's and little you's out there, where I'm doing these shows in museums and galleries and things like that, you feel included. And there you can go there and see something that looks like you. I didn't have that opportunity really when I was in school. So it means a lot to me to be able to do that today. And that's another one of those facets that tie to my work, is that I'm not really making this work for me. I'm making it for you and the future yous to have a better connection to who my people are and where we come from. I actually think we're coming close to the end. These works are all up in my Detroit show at David Klein Gallery that just opened last week, Saturday, I think it was. If you're in Detroit, you can reach the gallery and set up a time to come and check it out. But this whole body of work is going to be called Black America Again. And it's the redo of kind of how we keep going in a circle about where we are today, starting from slavery to now, to where it's things have definitely changed, but there are some similarities. And so it's that return to how things were before, but also talking about how we're going to go back to things once this pandemic is over. And I guess in a way you can call it Back to the Future would be another good title, good movie. And, you know, hopefully once this is all over and we can really take everything we learned and experience over this last year and make it a focus to be better and treat people better. And I think this is the last one, and this is my biggest piece to date. I still can't really say who this is for, but it's a special commission. I think I'm not supposed to say it until they announce it, so I won't tell you. But I was commissioned to make my little tiny figures, my little 12 and 13-inch figures, life size. So this figure is 67 inches tall, 5'7", 5'8", something like that, about my height. And it was insane to make this. I do love sculpture. And I know my statement or my bio, I'm a printmaker, sculptor, painter. Basically, I just make stuff. And it was really crazy to try to figure out how this structure would go so it'll be strong enough to hold the weight of all this oil paint. The typical sculptures are solid and easy to move, I guess, because you can grab them and things like that. So it's gonna be really fun moving this out of my studio. But it was, now that I made it, I can't wait to make more. And the title, Right On for the Darkness, is another Curtis Mayfield song. And I really want to jump into questions and things like that. So I won't speak much more about it, but play that song. If you don't play any of the songs, find that song and play it, and it'll really sum up everything we talked about today and everything I feel. And it should be my artist statement. That's how big that song is for me. But I believe that is it. And we should do some Q&A stuff or whatever if people have something that they want to ask.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that awesome presentation.
I hope that wasn't too long. I didn't even look at the clock, but.
No, you're perfect. No worries. So I'll give people some time to put their questions in the chat. I had a couple of questions, so I'll start off. So I noticed that in some of your two-dimensional work, that a lot of the figures have halos around them. I was curious if that was like a specific, like you're taking that from somewhere, or if that had like a specific meaning for you.
Yeah, so initially it was my nod to art history, right? These women are, or even when they're male figures, like they're speaking to them about it's me honoring them, and they're on this like pedestal, you know. It's kind of like it's kind of worship for me in a way, where they're in cultures, they're these gift bearers, you know, and they're honoring these people. And my way of honoring the whoever the painting's about is telling that story and telling our connection and sharing it. So now it's literally in paint, so it's there as long as the painting lives, you know. So that memory will be there physically till the painting is not there anymore. So that halo idea is me nodding to art history, but kind of putting them on a platform where I think they're this angelic way of thinking about them. Not that they're dead or alive or whatever, but it's kind of where I think they should be. You know?
Gotcha. Thank you. So I'm going to jump in with our first question from Amy. She says, wonderful presentation and amazing body of work. What is the process for your 3D paintings and your sculptures? Do you make 4 sketches to see how all the different sides will look?
So I don't draw. We were talking about it earlier that I just started back drawing. If you guys will follow on Instagram, I started doing some drawings, prepping for all these paintings on paper last year. And I literally made 45 or 50 of them, just me going through until I ran out of paper. And those are the first sketches that I made pretty much since school. 2005 was when I graduated. That's probably the last time I did a drawing or sketch for something. I think 2012 I had a show in Beijing, and that was a drawing show. And I had to draw, and it was the worst panic, anxiety attack like ever, because I don't draw. I literally had to go out and buy paper and pencils and charcoal to start drawing because I didn't have the material. And then it stopped. Once I was over that show, I was like, I'm over drawing, I'm not drawing anymore. Everything is in my head. I kind of have a lot of ideas in my head, and I figured if they're there, I don't really need to write them down. my brain doesn't hold a lot of things, but whatever it does, it can hold art ideas. it can't hold anything else, but it can store a lot of art ideas. So all the work I've done since I've been back in painting has just came out of my head. I look at social media a lot. I look at fashion a lot, and paintings, old paintings, photography, sculptures, and stuff like that. So I feel like when I'm looking, I'm drawing. And when it's time for me to get in the studio, it kind of just happens. And it's more reactive than planned. And as for the structures and things like that, I use foam. Like there's this blue dense foam. I always forget the name of it because that's just me. And I could not be lazy and actually look things up, but I'm like, everyone knows. But there's this blue foam that you get at the art store, and I kind of carve with that. I have, when I do draw, is that I have the measurements that I need to fit. Your proportions of, make sure that anatomy-wise things make sense. And the heads are like 1 inch, so it's like 8 inches of foam and whatever, then I can extend and move whatever. But the carving, even the carving aspect is kind of unique. Each one is like a little different because I'm not planning anything out. But it's great because it gives them their own personality, their own character about them. And so their story is individually different. So when you see them all lined up in a show, they're all unique, which is really awesome for me because I make so many of them. I really need them to not be similar. So I don't make a mold or anything and reproduce them. Each one is made as if it was the only one. And then modeling paste, you can get that at the art store as well. I'm sure someone out there probably knows how to make it. I don't really know how to make it. So I think it's just the same as gesso, just a little thicker. And that once that sets up and gets cured and nice and stiff, then we just pour out a bunch of paint. I mix a ton of paint. I use oil paint because I've never used acrylics. So, but I like the time, that I'm allowed to screw around with it and figure things out. Because again, like there's no sketch or anything. So I'm literally reacting. And if I see a color or find a color that I really love, and that's a starting point, that's a catapult into whatever else. Or when I'm sculpting with paint and making dresses, usually I have a dress in mind. There's a handful of dresses that are just my idea, my color palette, but most of them come from Valentino, Chanel, Dior, whoever. I'm obsessed with all those. Valentino is definitely like my guy. And, it literally takes those classical art historical dresses and make them contemporary, which is kind of what I try to do with painting is, take those old ways and turn them upside down and make them new, yeah, that's literally the material. I use brushes, palette knives, just like you do two-dimensionally. Now it's just wrapped around a three-dimensional surface. So when I'm making them, it's not a real difference than me working 2D. Some people ask how you do both. And I know I'm not, I see them just as the same thing. So it's just me doing one thing.
Gotcha. Thank you. And piggybacking off of that, Anne asks, do you mix anything in with your oil paint to add body to the paint? I'm also really curious because I can imagine piles and piles of tubes or something.
Yes, that's what smart people would do. They would add stuff into the paint. I don't, unless I'm pressed for time, because it takes so long to dry, and I've never had a dry show. Even the show that's up now in Detroit, I have to pack them. Like, I make boxes and things like that, and because there's so much paint that you can't really have pressure on the paint because they're not solid yet. So it's really fun to wrap them and package them and ship them, because you're saying a prayer the entire time that they don't send you that email like, so all your pieces are ruined. So I've been fortunate enough, now I probably just jinxed myself, but we've been fortunate enough. I've only had to fall back out of one show, and it was just because I was too afraid to ship them without them falling apart. And that was last month. I had to back out of the show in Germany. It was kind of last minute, but it was a major opportunity, and I still wish I could have done it. But I was really afraid that the pieces would ship across, and between here and Germany, something would have happened. So I was really afraid of that. But yeah, if I do use a medium, I use Galkit. But as far as a thickener and things like that, I don't do it. I like laying out paint over craft paper or brown paper and letting the oil soak out, so it's really malleable, like kind of like clay. And if I need it to have more fat, then I just add some oil back into it. But I love how thick it gets, and I can really push and pull it when I need to. So yeah, no medium. I don't know a lot about those mediums that thicken. Besides, I guess there's marble dust, beeswax and stuff, but it gets that chalky look that I need the wet look. You know?
Yeah, I totally gotcha. We have a question from Anne. They say, thank you, Lavaughan. I love what you're doing. Very interested in the specifics of your building process. So I know you kind of touched on that, but I guess maybe as an example, like that really big figure that you just finished, if maybe you could take us through the process of like how that just physically
Yeah, so I could probably just quickly whip this thing around and show you guys something. So this is the big ginormous thing. I'm still building the base for it, so my wood has like been delayed, but it's coming. So I'll build the base that it's going to sit on. But so this is one of the structures, right? And it's just me playing with a shape. There's that blue foam. This is like paper towel tubes that I'm using for the structure to get the arms going. And then you can see here is where I'm starting to use that spray foam to kind of get a belly, get some leg action. Those are going to be some 6 sneakers. And building that way. And then I'll carve that so I get something that I really like and coat it with modeling paste. But you can see here, I have like buckets and buckets that I've used over the last few years. And then I started squeezing paint. I'll get a close-up where you can kind of see how much paint. You can get an idea in how much I'm actually building. You can see some holes in there. But yeah, that's kind of it. It's not like a complicated thing. The structure is when it's bigger, I use those steel piping, and instead of wood or things I've used for the smaller figures. And And inside there, in the thighs, there's like 4x4s that are connected to the piping, so it gives it a lot of weight. And then go spray crazy with the foam. And yeah, until it's solid, and then just carving until I get the right silhouette. And then just knowing, the great thing about the modeling paste is it kind of gives me groundwork to lay my paint down. So while I'm laying modeling paste, I kind of know how the planes and stuff are going to go for the oil paint. Kind of like I love landscapes as well. I don't look at a lot. I don't look at enough of them, but I used to dream that I was with the Hudson River School. It was a weird dream because I never painted landscapes, but I had so many dreams that I was with that group of painters, and I was painting landscapes in my dreams. But when I woke up, I was like, no thanks. I don't want to do it. But that being said, I dream a lot about artists, and I dream a lot about painting ideas. So that's kind of what jumps me off on making so much work, is I'll dream about something and then I have to address it. So whether it's what I'm similar to what I'm doing or like completely random, I gotta go. And that's kind of what happened with the Philip Gustin dream. Was he said doing it, and I was like, okay, I guess I better stop all my other stuff and start figuring out how to make 3D work. And it's like, if it sucks, then I'll just blame Philip Gustin. It's his fault.
Thank you. I love seeing the different stages that all the sculptures are in. That was like everything. I love that.
Yeah, and I work on everything at the same time. So until I get sick of something, then I change. You know, I'm doing these night paintings now where they're like really, really dark, and they just look dumb when I try to show people. So I'm not going to show you guys yet until they're dry and you can actually see them. But something said I need to make some night paintings, and so I was like, oh, okay, I'll do that in the middle of making all the other work. So I started like 8 of them, and I'm like, I don't know when they're going to be ready. Probably next year. They're really bad right now. We have some issues. We're working them out. You know, we're almost broken up, but I think we're gonna keep trying. We're gonna go to couples therapy or something.
Sounds like a good idea. I have another question from Alexandra. I'm curious why you use oil paints in your sculptures as opposed to other more traditional mediums like clay. Would you call your pieces paintings or sculptures? I think you already kind of talked about.
Yeah. Again, that's one of those things that smart people do. That's just not me. I think when I had that dream, right? We talked specifically about making 3-dimensional paintings. So that's been the idea, you know, and I thought, what better way to drive home the idea of a 3-dimensional painting than using paint to make it. You know, mind you, like I envisioned one day I'll make a life-size figure, but I never thought about how I would move that, because oil paint is so delicate. You know, you can't grab it like you can grab marble or something that's cured and solid. You know, so this big figure is actually in parts. And when the movers, the art handlers come, they'll take it in 3 different parts and we'll assemble it, and it'll sit that way. Yeah, stubborn is the one. Not caring about cost is another one. Another issue that I have. And like to make things difficult for myself. I think it would be a lot easier if I use clay, or even if I used acrylics, you know. I found some guy online now that makes like this super, super thick acrylic paint, and I forget his name, but I screenshot it the other day. And I'm like, okay, when I get ready to do these outside figures for some public garden pieces that I'm making for people, that I would use that, you know, and he literally just packs his stuff in a piping bag and squeezes it out, and then he's like, ta-da. And I'm like, man, that's genius. I was like, can you make that an oil paint? Because I still want to do oil, you know? But yeah, one day I probably will do some clay stuff. I did take some clay classes in school, so it's in my head, but it's like I have this timeline of how I want to do things, and I'm just not there yet. At some point, I'll use clay, but I'll always use paint because you're painting, which is whatever. You don't need to use paint to make a painting, but that's my my justification for doing the stuff that I do.
Gotcha. So we have a comment from Jen. She says, the work presents this touch quality. I think of you touching the sculptures and then your imprint on them becoming the absence of touch that flatness probably can't accomplish. Their existence and person, I imagine, is so physical and lifelike to our eye. It reminds me of our impact on everything and everything's impact on us. I feel like they describe the songs that you describe perfectly. I hope the conversations surrounding the pieces become your own versions of these songs and stories. Thanks for sharing.
For sure, totally. I don't think the impact of the figures hit me until I did the last show in New York at Volta, when we set up the show, I was uncomfortable. Like they were in my face, you know, like in my space, like I couldn't, like I literally had to move around them to go to where I needed to go. So that confronting or like commanding you acknowledge that I'm here, I think is what we've been screaming like forever. Like you can't avoid it. And much like I think the one great thing from this pandemic is that it forced everyone to stay at home, and you couldn't avoid seeing everything that was going on. You couldn't go play sports. You couldn't go get drunk in the bar or go, you know, do whatever you're doing for a distraction and say, well, I didn't know or I didn't see it. Everyone saw and heard everything. And I think it's making us where we are right now, where, you know, people are pushing forward and joining together, and then other people are clearly showing who they are and going opposite. But it put everyone out and front and center. And I think that's what my figures, that's what I hope they do. And that's what I felt at my last show. Now with the titles and the music just kind of reiterates those things. And my next show is going to be a ton of rap songs where I think I'm still being too soft and too nice with my music choices and my words. So that it's going to be a lot more of aggression in the next show that I'm going to do this summer. And it's going to be really funny because the colors are really pretty. And that contrast, but it just says like who are as people. We can be in love, be angry, you know, be hungry, you know, starve, like all this stuff, all these emotions, these ideas, these feelings, this content, where all that stuff at the same time. And I'm trying to paint all of that with the body work that I'm working on now, which hopefully visually it'll still tie together, create, and not just have 4 different bodies of work, but I need them to have this conversation. And I think the music along with it will really pull everything together, and, you know, and keep yelling and screaming at everyone. one of artists that I didn't talk about is Sam Messer, Jake Berteau, John Walker is another artist that I enjoy. These old guys, and they kind of were the ones that kind of gave me the nod that I could possibly be a painter. Ann Harris is another one who I adore, but she didn't bite her tongue one time with me. And I wish I could be a little bit more like Ann. She almost made me cry with her crits. So like that type of energy. And Jake Berteau told me to treat art like my box, because he's older. He passed, but he's old. And he was back when you had the big radios on your shoulder and cassettes of your music. And he's like, he remembers walking down the street in New York, and it was like, MF this, MF that, blah, blah, blah. You know, it is like everyone was forced to hear what the music was saying. And he's like, that's what you kind of need to do in your work. It's like, it's your boombox, and scream everything that you're saying out so everyone can hear it. So that's kind of it.
Gotcha. That's a good analogy. I have a question from Paula. Paula says, wow, I love your work. Thank you for sharing your studio and process. So generous. Do you worry about durability of the sculptures? Are the various foams you use durable or like archival, I guess?
That's so good. I don't worry about it. It's really funny. So now, like, I didn't worry about it until people started buying it, right? And when the museum started acquiring work, then I got a little nervous. But from what I've read, the foam is gonna be there forever because it's gross. It's like man-made, you know, crap that's just gonna ruin the planet. So it's gonna like outlive us, you know. But in terms of how I prep it, I seal it and prep it the same way I do a canvas or anything. So it's primed, and then I lay down the modeling paste, so it's completely sealed. And I feel like as long as oxygen doesn't get, I mean, I guess everything deteriorates at some point, but I think we'll be long gone before they start to fall apart. But if they do, I'm totally open to just making whoever bought it a new piece. So, but hopefully it doesn't. But from what I've read, that foam is going to be here for a really long time. So, but also I think you can't really worry about that. Sure, you want everything to be archival, but I mean, how long does paper last? I don't know. They said it's going to last a long time, but I don't know. I saw some drawings from Goya a few years ago that he had these oil sketches and stuff. So he was in the 1600s. So if his stuff can last till today, I think I'm safe. But that's it. I'm sure there's better ways for me to build something and do something, but and I think most people that buy the work now kind of understand what I do and how I do it, and they're good, I'm good. Let's just keep making art.
That sounds good. I think we have time for maybe 2 more questions. So we have a question from Susan. Do you have assistants helping you? I was also curious about that, if you have anybody helping you prep stuff.
Nope. Really simple. Nope. It's just me. I'm all alone. Oh, me and my friends, we hang out. They assist me. They tell me what to do next. But I honestly, I don't. I think one, I feel bad for having people come and help me and not pay them. You know, like I don't think I'm in a place where I can really afford to pay an assistant the way that I would want to be paid if I did some work for someone. And I get it, they're getting like an experience, they get to work with an artist and like put it on their resume and stuff, but like you gotta eat, man. So until I feel like I can pay them what I need to pay them, what I want to pay them, I just do it. I do it all myself. This is my job. So I'm literally, and I'm fortunate enough to have a tiny studio, but it's a home studio. So I'm literally here 24 hours a day, and I can have a building day or a paint day or whatever I need to keep going. But yeah, I zone out and I just work. And if I had an assistant, I'd just do more work. I think I'm doing enough work right now, so it's probably not good if I have an assistant. And somehow for painting, I don't even know how to make my paintings, so it'll be really hard to have someone else try to do it. But in the future, I'll definitely have someone to build my structures, because that's a headache. It's really annoying. Mm-hmm. So I would like to not have that headache anymore. Yeah. You
know. And I guess another question about those three-dimensional pieces. Anne asks, what carving tools do you use? Like, do you use palette knives, etc.?
I do use palette knives. And the bread cutter. Like what you cut bread with. I literally bought an extra one for the kitchen, and this is what I shave off the foam. The great part of I used the foam cutter for a while, the thing that heats up, but the fumes that set off was like really gross, and so I stopped using that. But that's great for the blue foam stuff. You get a super clean cut. It goes like butter through it. Whatever. Wear a mask. We all wear masks now, so now everyone has a mask to when they're doing their work in the studio. But for the spray foam, the bread cutter is amazing. And then I have palette knives and painting. I use spoons, sticks, Q-tips, whatever I can do to make a mark and stuff. And just go with my fingers. You know, it's really basic. It's the same thing everyone does two-dimensionally. I just took that, like I didn't buy any special things. The only special thing I bought was the bread knife. That's it. Everything else is already here.
Thank you. And I have a final question here, and then we'll wrap up. Another question from Amy. What contemporary artists do you admire?
Man, it's like I'm a super fan of like artists, and every day I've had like a new art crush, right? And I will say the artist that has probably impacted me the most, besides Valentino. So I think fashion, for whatever, we all started the same foundation classes in art school, and then we just kind of branched off. But Kerry James Marshall is probably my guy. He made me really think about painting the Black figure and saying what that's needed to be said. And I'll say Mickaeling Thomas and Derek Adams kind of like explained it better to me. But it was seeing the Kara J. Marshall show in New York a few years ago was the game changer for me. I didn't know Black could be Black until I saw his paintings. You know, if that makes sense. That's a really crazy conversation. I intentionally left it out of the lecture because that would be the whole lecture. But if you ever look up his like talks and stuff, he's actually giving a talk today, but it's or tomorrow, but it's already like gone. You can't get in on it anymore. Like it's already closed. But he talks about Black being Black and how it's like the ignored color and things like that that people think you can't deal with. But there's so many different Blacks, and it's just like blue or red or these things, you know. But he painted Black. And I was like, that's crazy. Like, how do you do that? But yeah, but I mean, there's Cecily Brown. I love Cecily Brown. I'm like addicted to Cecily Brown. And some paintings I really love of hers. The other ones I'm like, I could do that. You know? And my one of my mentors, two of them, I guess I should say three of them, so no one's upset. But Peter Lewis, Jim Cambrone, or I think he goes by James Cambrone in the art world, and Sam Messer. Sam Messer is the ultimate reason I use thick paint. I always wanted to make paintings like his and kind of like battle him, you know, with like who can use the most paint and control it. It's like the one thing about so much paint is really hard to control and keep it clean and not muddy and dirty, and where you just waste a big chunk of paint. I don't waste any paint. I haven't wasted any paint in, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 years. Everything that I lay out like goes onto a figure. So I'm really pumped about that I don't throw any paint away. But yeah, I mean, I love everyone. That's my other thing. I love every artist out there, and also like Nicolene Thomas and Derek Adams. I actually got to meet them, so that also makes them like my favorites. But there's Derek for sure. Kevin Beasley is another artist. I'm gonna screw up her name. Nicole Eisenman. I'm sure that's not how you say her last name, but I hope so. But I love her, and I love her work. And Genevieve Gennard. I'm gonna screw her last name up too, but she is like probably my biggest art crush. Her photos are like crazy, and I feel like her work says a lot of the things that I think about and don't have the words to say, you know, in my vocabulary yet. But her work really speaks to me, and yeah, if we keep going, like no more names are popping in my head, but I enjoy everyone's work because I feel like it always teaches me a little bit more about my work, and but also we're like different. You know, that's one big thing for me. It was trying to figure out how I can be not like everyone else, you know, and then figure out how to do that. Find my spot and then figure out how to make it good. Like making a good painting is like my goal. Without a title, with a title, whatever visually you see, I want it to be good. And that's my battle. You know.
Gotcha. That sounds like an awesome group show. Like all the people that you listed, I'd love to see them all.
Oh my God. If they ever be like, hey man, you're in the cool kids group, come do a show with me. I'm like, what? You know, some people say I'm in the cool kids group, but it's different. I want to be in that. I want to hang out with those guys, just drink a beer and not even talk about art, but just hang out, you know?
Yeah. So it looks like we're a little bit over 1 o'clock. So I'm going to go ahead and conclude today's programming. Thank you everybody for attending this week's Visiting Artist Program lecture with Lavaughan. Thank you. Big round of applause. That was awesome. We hope that you enjoyed today's lecture and we look forward to seeing you with our next visiting artist next week. So thank you so much and see you guys soon.
Thanks guys.